collaboration with the Cyprus Mail. This is the Cyprus News Digest with Rosie Haralambos.
Coming up this week, the Commissioner for Civil Service Reform warns against delays in its implementation.
If we do go back and we do repeat our previous mistakes, then it will be a question of time to return, to have the crisis back. And this time it will be much more difficult to handle.
The EU Commission representation hosts a seminar on the single market and Cyprus.
Let's have a positive agenda. Let's see which other things we can make go forward, like the internal market.
Cyprus will receive huge coverage during the upcoming Cyprus Rally, last event in the European Rally Championship.
No less than 68 hours of broadcast of Cyprus Rally's TV programs worldwide.
Festival goers are invited to the picturesque village of Pera this weekend.
These forward-thinking type people, together with the traditionalists, have created this festival to bring together all the modern and old elements, bring the best out of the village and offer something for all kinds of people.
And Monday was European Day of Languages.
They could also visit the language sessions that were taking place parallel to this event. We had 12 different languages that were offered, both for more grown-up students and for younger students.
The Deputy Minister to the President, Konstantinos Petrides, was a keynote speaker earlier this week at a conference on the European single market and Cyprus. He is also tasked, of course, with carrying out the much-needed reform of the civil service on the island, and I asked him what had happened since I last spoke to him a year ago.
Regarding the reforms, they were delayed. I hope they will go through in December, but I don't want to make any predictions or any estimates. I just hope that they will not be turned down because of political and not rational reasons.
It is a little worrying. The Finance Minister has said people are going back to the old mentality
Well, unfortunately, we do see this kind of turn in some people's anticipations and mentality. Nevertheless, if we do go back and we do repeat our previous mistakes, then it will be a question of time to return, to have the crisis back. And this time it will be much more difficult to handle. So as far as the government is concerned, we are decided to carry on our efforts and see how it goes.
What's your feeling as a Cypriot about the fact that such large numbers of the population don't seem to see the dangers?
Well, I don't have any polls, but it seems that this is a general European phenomenon, that there is a turn to populism. I cannot explain this sociologically. Nevertheless, I hope that at the end reason and logic will prevail.
And let's get to the conference today. You said it's about wider reform.
Well, it's also about the reforms in the European Union and the effort to complete the long-forgotten single market, which is itself it's a very ambitious reform, but this is the backbone of the European integration, and if it's not completed, then the European project will not proceed. And how Cyprus is expecting to behave within this internal market.
And how is Cyprus?
Well, it also depends on our own effectiveness and success to pass the right reforms, to change how the market works, to change how the economy works, to work in a more sustainable way. And this will determine the success of Cyprus, both autonomously but also in the context of the single market.
And what about in the context of the Cyprus problem? Because if there's a solution, that's going to change the
Of course.
goalpost.
The biggest reform for Cypriots would be the solution of the Cyprus issue. But all the structural reforms that we're trying to do, they will be very useful for the day after as well, because we will have already a more efficient and viable structure of both the government and the civil service and the economy.
Konstantinos Petrides, Deputy Minister to the President and Commissioner for Civil Service Reform.
Get in touch with the Cyprus News Digest by emailing cyprusnewsdigest@gmail.com.
That conference on the internal market was organised by the EU Commission representation in Cyprus, and I asked the head of the representation, George Markopoliodis, what the idea behind the conference was.
Well, when President Juncker took office, he set out his vision about the 5 years, for the 5 years that he's going to be President of the Commission, by setting out 10 priorities. One of those priorities is the strengthening of the internal market, something that has been going on in the European Union for a long time, something which has been appreciated by all those who are now traveling, or that can travel, that can do business, that can go and install in another member state, work, open up a business. All this is the internal market, a big space without barriers within the EU where people, goods and services and capital can circulate without barriers. Now we need to strengthen that. Everybody, I think, has reaped the benefits and has seen how useful it is for the European Union. So we're focusing on Cyprus, an internal market. So we're having this meeting today with Mr. Petrides, the Deputy Minister to the President, Mrs. Pilidou, Mr. Antoniou from the employers. So we're hoping that we're going to have a fruitful discussion to see how we can progress in integrating the internal market all over Europe, so that we continue to reap the benefits of this without any rupture.
And of course there is a big question mark in Europe, because this business of free movement of people, if you're in the internal market, and the Brexit and all of those things, has in a sense thrown a bit of a spanner in the works. How far is that playing out in countries that are still in the EU?
Well, I think, well, let's separate the two, and you know very well, I think, Rosie, that the discussions on the Brexit are not for now. They're going to be activated once the UK requests it.
But it's a reflection of the populism that's going on in Europe.
Yes,
there are elections coming up. Merkel is looking a little bit fragile, possibly, in her political position.
Yeah, no, I think what we're trying to do in a very sober way to try and demonstrate the benefits of the internal market, and also to say what are the fundamental principles of the internal market. The principles of the internal market is that freedom of movement, that freedom of establishment, which is you can't have an a la carte approach to this. You can't cherry picking. You say I like that bit and I don't like the other one. This is not on. I mean, and this is the principle that has actually got us to here, so that people can actually go and work and establish and open up a business and stay legitimately in another member state. All this has been the internal market. And
yeah, sure, but what I'm saying is this under threat at the moment?
No.
With the way that some European member states are looking at the whole package?
No, I don't think so. I mean, this is not something that I say or you say or somebody else says. This is something which is enshrined in the treaties. And the treaties, I know it sounds sometimes a little bit sort of far removed from our daily preoccupations as citizens, but at the end of the day, this is the way we operate. This is our gospel in a sort of legal point of view. We don't decide on a daily basis how to operate. We have rules to which everybody has adhered to, everybody has accepted, and this is how we operate. And I don't think that it is under threat, no, under no circumstances.
And the conference is aiming to obviously facilitate things for Cyprus in particular. What else do you hope will come of it?
Yes, obviously to facilitate things for Cyprus in the domain of the internal market, where Cyprus is doing reasonably well. But I mean, obviously there's room for improvement, like in any other member state. But I also think that it is important that we focus now. You said yourself, Europe is at a crossroads. President Juncker said this. I mean, he was very, very, very open, and he was very, very honest in his State of the Union speech a few weeks ago, that we're at a crossroads, we're in a difficult situation. But he proposed a positive agenda. He said there's no point in moaning, there's no point in doomsdaying. Let's have a positive agenda. Let's see which other things we can make go forward, like the internal market, like the investment plan for Europe, that he's hoping to have a significant increase in the funds that are going to be available to 2020, something like half a trillion euros, so that people start getting jobs, feel the economy moving. Let's get a positive agenda. Of course there are problems in Europe, but then of course there have been problems with migration, with terrorism. We're trying to face them. We have been doing quite a lot. There's still more to do. But let's have a positive agenda, but also deal with the big problems of Europe, which is basically what kind of Europe we want.
The head of the EU Commission representation in Cyprus, George Markopoliodis.
Keep up to date with events in Cyprus and around the world with the Cyprus News Digest.
The Cyprus Rally 2016 kicked off earlier this week with a press conference, and flying into the island from France was Jean-Baptiste Leigh, who is the European Rally Championship coordinator. He joins us now. Jean-Baptiste, you're familiar now with the Cyprus Rally, and tell me how you feel about it in terms of where it fits into the European Rally Championship, because the terrain here is different, the climate here is different, and since the introduction of the super special stage crossing the Green Line in Nicosia, there's a political aspect to it as well.
CNP as Felicity Cyprus Rally is different from the rest of rallies of the seasons. Cyprus Rally has its own identity, its own stages, own landscape, and own specificities. And of course, the type of special stage are very particular, and you just have to go in Cyprus to find this kind of stages. You cannot find it in the rest of Europe. So this is one of the reasons why we love to come in Cyprus and keep Cyprus Rally at the international level, because for the sporting side and the technical side, it's very, very interesting for drivers, because it's really different from the rest of the championship. And secondly, yes, you mentioned the particularity with specific stages. With specific stages crossing the green light. My opinion on this is that sports is sports and stays sports, and I think that sports is out of the politics lines, and it's a very good message to pass, to see that for the sporting reason it's totally possible to cross all borders and to make it a successful event, keeping in mind the safety and all these things, of course, but I think it's a really good message.
You mentioned the technicalities of the Cyprus Rally, and it is different for drivers who are more used to flatter, possibly faster stages on mainland Europe. The young drivers coming up now must be a little bit wary when they come to Cyprus, because they haven't come across this sort of terrain before.
You're totally right. Cyprus Rally is a big part of the cake, a big piece of the cake. And for newcomers, it's not so easy to drive in Cyprus. So it would be definitely a very big challenge for him, because he doesn't have any big experience at the wheel of R5 cars, but he has never come to Cyprus before.
All the twisty stages. What about who is vying now for the championship title?
The champion has been the Kajetanovic won the 2016 edition of the championship in the last rallies a couple of weeks ago, but nothing is done for the second place. So we will have a fantastic fight for the second place of the championship between Charalambous and Lukianouk, who will fight until the last meter of the stage. So I don't have any doubt on the success and the thrill all during the weekend, because the quality and the number of competitors on top and who are eligible to win is huge. We have no less than four drivers who are able to win the rally. And on top of this, we put the Love Cyprus Golden Stage, which will keep the thrill until the last meter of the stage between all these drivers, but also with all the local competitors who can fight and make a big sprint on only two stages on the last of the
right at the end of the rally, and that's
exactly.
for big money put up by the Cyprus Tourism Organisation.
Exactly.
Now let's talk a little bit about the media coverage, because Cyprus relies heavily on tourism, and of course coverage of the rally goes out to millions of viewers all over the world. So tell us a little bit about that coverage and how the benefits accrue back to Cyprus.
Exactly. I will base all my words on the 2015 edition, because you easily understand that 16 is not finished, so we still did not collect all the data. But as 2015 is concerned, for instance, ERC season represents an audience of 318 million viewers worldwide on Eurosport and in external channels out of Eurosport, and 1,081 hours of broadcast worldwide. This is for the complete ERC season. But as Cyprus is concerned, we have fantastic figures with no less than 68 hours of broadcast of Cyprus Rally's TV programs worldwide, and a little less than 30 million viewers in the world who have seen Cyprus Rally on TV, which is amazing.
It is amazing indeed, and rally fans on the island are gearing up, ready for the start of the big event in October.
In collaboration with the Cyprus Mail, this is the Cyprus News Digest with Rosie Haralambos.
The biggest achievement of Crime Stoppers has been the ability of the public to be able to give information about crime anonymously.
There's no way I could have kept prostituting without the drugs. There's no way I could have had my body used like a public toilet, because that's actually what prostitution is.
And then the fourth series I started 3 days after I'd won the Oscar, so the whole of the Monarch of the Glen experience was all interplatted with the Gosford Park Oscar experience.
I was working with Ronnie James Dio, and David was going to reform Whitesnake in 2003.
Cyprus was chosen because Cyprus is a stable, peaceful and secure place.
We have to really look closely. What are we doing with children? What are we doing with adolescents? And what are we doing with adults that can help them move into a more literate situation?
The ones that I'm proudest of are the ones that were true discoveries, where we found something we didn't know existed.
Pera din Platia is a festival happening at Pera Orinis, a very pretty village just outside Nicosia, and it's happening this weekend. Saturday, to be precise, a festival that starts off with kids in mind, and then it becomes the grown-ups' turn as the night wears on. Telling us all about it is Jim Themis. Jim, so what's the idea behind the festival? Because it's something I think you've done in the past, mostly music-based, but looking at the schedule for this year, you've got a lot of other things going on too.
Yeah, we have a children's section, we have performances for children, we have children's songs, and we have market stalls. We have actually 30 stalls with many different offerings.
Are those people who live in the village? Because it's become quite a community there, hasn't it, in Pera?
It has. And it's a more multicultural community right now, because we have people from all sorts, from all corners of the earth. We've got Scottish, Germans, from everywhere. And it's these forward-thinking type people, together with the traditionalists, have created this festival to bring together all the modern and old elements, bring the best out of the village, and offer something for all kinds of people, whether they're looking for modern music or
traditional crafts or whatever.
Crafts and, yeah.
For people who haven't been to Pera Orinis, how would you describe the village, Jim?
How would I describe the village? It's pure tradition and culture, Cyprus culture. It's in the old-fashioned traditions of the buildings are hundreds of years old, some of them, and the renovation that's going on right now is attempting to preserve the character of the village as it was many years ago. And it's quaint, it's interesting, it's fun. There's a lot of filming going on right now because of the character of the village, and it's a beautiful, lovely place to be, and the people there right now are forward-thinking people trying to offer something special to the people who are prepared to come and see.
Well, I must say, I remember the last time I was there, the one thing that strikes you is all those wonderful ancient Cypriot arches in the buildings and so on. There is a definite feel about the place. So you're going to be bringing it alive on Saturday. You start in the afternoon with all the kids' activities, but then things are going to progress through the evening, and you've got quite a big selection of people coming to play music for you.
We do, yes. We have some of the best musicians in Cyprus coming along. We have Zila Project, Monsieur Dumani, my band Pera will be playing. We have Windcraft and the Drumble Beats. And we have collaborations between all of the bands, especially with the children's music, where we'll be doing the songs of George Hadjibiaris, a man born in Pera, and his songs are famous throughout the world. And at the end of the children's section, all of the bands will come together and perform on one of his songs, which will be very exciting, especially for me, to play with such talented musicians.
So, where can people find out more?
We're in the What's On section of the Cyprus Mail. We're in all of the Greek language newspapers.
And online, can people access information there?
They can go to our Facebook website, Open Group of Artists, or Pera. You can go to the Pera Facebook site, and all the information is there available.
Right, well that's something that's happening this weekend, and with the main August festival season over, you might be looking for things to do, not just yourself, but with the kids as well. So go on Facebook, look up the Open Group of Artists, and find out how you can join them this weekend at Pera Orinis.
You can subscribe to the Cyprus News Digest on iTunes for free and get the program downloaded to your phone or tablet so you can listen anytime, anywhere.
September 26th was the European Day of Languages, and events were held at the University of Cyprus in Nicosia. Martha Neocleos from the EU representation in Cyprus has the details. Martha, this was something that was, I think, supported by all the embassies of the European Union, but also a lot of people interested in languages that actually have nothing to do with the European Union. So tell us about the day itself and who went. What did they do?
What did they do? All right, the day itself is a celebration of languages. It was established from the Council of Europe and the European Commission back in 2001 in the framework of the European Year of Languages. And since that day, we celebrated every year on the 26th of September, the European Day of Languages. So this year marks the 15th year anniversary that we are celebrating this event. And we're organizing in Europe, and not only, we're organizing events around cultural diversity and linguistic diversity in Europe. So on this day, the European Commission representation in Cyprus, together with the University of Cyprus, the Cyprus Linguistic Society and the Ministry of Education and Culture held a very nice and big and successful event at the University of Cyprus. It included a language fair with the participation of embassies from all the member states, as well as some other organizations like language institutes, like Cervantes and French Institute, the Dante Alighieri, which is the Italian Institute, the Goethe Institute, and much more. As well, the Cyprus Linguistic Society and the Erasmus Plus, which is also a very big program of the European Union, which includes, of course, languages. So this was one part. The other part was that we had a competition, a language quiz basically, both for elementary school children and for high school children.
So did you get lots of schools coming up in busloads to visit?
Yes, we had in busload, exactly as you said. We had 27 schools, high schools and lyceums, and 10 elementary schools that visited. So from all over Cyprus. This was organized in the beginning of the year. A circular was sent out by the Ministry of Education and Culture, and schools were kindly asked to participate by sending a group of students. And so what did the kids do when they got there? When they got there, first they had the opportunity to go around in the fair. Secondly, they could work in groups of 4, and they were asked to do this language quiz, which included lots of questions, and it had clues for them, like small images that were basically put up on the stands. So each stand had a picture, and so they had to do the whole round in the exhibition area to get some help if the questions were not easy to answer, which they were not. So this was a very nice activity for them. They could also visit the language sessions that were taking place parallel to this event. We had 12 different languages that were offered, both for more grown-up students and for younger students. We called them language tasters because it was basically not a lesson. It was an opportunity for them to see how the language and to hear how a language sounds. And maybe give them the opportunity to see whether this language is something for them.
And that's important when you're talking about young people, because language isn't very high on the Cypriot school curriculum, is it?
Yes, it still is. It's offered. English is still offered from a very young age. But now with the changes that have taken place in the school curriculum, we see that not much emphasis is put on language learning. Of course, French and English is offered up to a certain age, but then the children have to decide on which direction they want to
But it's not part of the main school curriculum, and it puts Cypriot children at a great disadvantage in Europe.
They are in a great disadvantage if we look all over Europe and we see other countries excelling in language learning in comparison to Cyprus. Unfortunately, in Cyprus, we still think that English is enough. And English is sufficient to do our job, let's say, to do what we want. This is not true. This is not true because we need to learn foreign languages in order to, I think, to become better European citizens. If to put it bluntly and plainly, if we don't understand each other better, we will not be able to communicate better. And so language learning is definitely something that we must invest in.
Right, well that was the European Day of Languages, but it is a high priority for European Union in general.
Yes, we put a lot of emphasis in language learning. I mean, the European Union itself is multilingual with 24 languages and a very efficient translation and interpretation service providing exactly that linguistic diversity for all its citizens.
Yes, so what I was going to ask you is, how do you follow this up? What does the representation, for example, in Cyprus, has it got any plans to follow up the Day of Languages by continuing to encourage linguistic diversity among, let's say, school children in Cyprus?
This event takes place every year, and we've been doing it since 2001. But apart from that, we also visit schools, and we specifically talk about the importance of language learning. And we see that schools are responding, and there are some teachers at the schools that are really, really keen on promoting linguistic diversity. But apart from that, we must not forget that the European Commission has no competence on when it comes to the educational policy of the member states.
No, sure, but you do a lot of outreach work.
Yes, I do.
In a lot of different areas.
Yes.
And I'm just wondering, you need to maybe make this more successful by doing things between 1 September and the next.
We do, in the sense that we visit schools. For example, tomorrow I'm going to go and speak to 2 more schools, one in Larnaca and one in Nicosia, and we do this all year round. I mean, my role here as a language officer is exactly to promote language learning in schools. And together with the Ministry of Education and Culture, we're working towards giving the opportunity to schools to learn more about languages in Europe and how important languages is for them. They may not realize it now when they're young, but when they grow up, it's definitely something that they will need. That is exactly why we called our event Languages for Life, because it's a tool, it's a valuable tool for children, for adults in the future.
And that's Martha Neokleos from the European Commission representation in Cyprus, telling us about the celebrations for the European Day of Languages. Well, that about wraps up this edition of the Cyprus News Digest. Many thanks for your company. Hope you'll join me next week. Till we meet again, take care and God bless. Bye-bye now.